So it's kind of going to be a very simple thing, simple and not. How do we start? How do we start and where do we start? First of all, we've decided, we've got something interesting to say, some kind of interesting travels that we want to share with other people. So where do we start? The worst way to start is, well, a good travel story is chronological, especially on a train or on a plane. When I worked in the Daily Telegraph travel section, we would cross this beginnings out because they don't tell anything to the reader, who knows already that you are traveling and he doesn't really care how you travel and what means of transport do you take. So my favorite way of starting a story, not just a travel story, it's an ancient literary device called in media res. Yeah. So basically what it means, it's a plunge into the narrative. You start not from the beginning, but from the middle of the story. Or if not from the middle, then with something intriguing, that kind of sucks the reader straight into the story. There is such an example. I don't know who penned it. When he woke up, the dinosaur was no longer there. I think it's classic. This is a brilliant beginning, especially for a travel story. And of course, we all heard we probably didn't actually hear who penned this sentence. It was on Dark and Stormy Night, which is used as a kind of as a cliche of the first sentence. It's actually an excellent first sentence, and it belongs to the guy who used to be our neighbor here in Hertfordshire, where I'm talking from, Edward Balva-Lytton, who lived in the town called Nebworth, about 10 miles away from here. He was a very prolific writer, Victorian writer, basically 19th century. He was more prolific than even Dickens. And a very, very good writer, very kind of undeservedly, probably forgotten. He wrote dozens, if not hundreds, of novels and stories and so on, and was better known for very extremely bad marriage, that he had bad relationship with his wife for some reason. Well, I know about him so well because I made him into one of the characters in my fiction book, fantasy called Granny Yaga. So he actually he's a character in that story and even has an affair with Baba Yaga, believe it or not. But anyway, that's a totally different story. He wrote this sentence. It was a dark and stormy night, and it kind of gently takes you into the narrative. Well, there are some other well-known and nice ways of starting a story. I'll just give you just a couple of very quick examples, and then I will ask you to think of an opening sentence for a story. Well, as I said, avoid sentences like the train was approaching Moscow, or I fastened my seatbelt in preparation for landing. They're absolutely useless. They don't actually mean anything. They don't tell the reader anything. On the other hand, my boat overturned in the middle of the river is a very good example of taking a plunge in more than one sense. Well, to quote some of my stories, I have to do it sometimes, not well, because I think I kind of somewhere succeed, somewhere I don't, but there's nothing wrong with that. A story on my time in Mount Essos in Greece, this amazing monastic republic, all-male republic of Orthodox monks. The mountains, the beautiful scenery, unbelievable history. The mountain pass was steep and narrow, strewn with rough, shapeless rocks and mule droppings. It wound mercilessly uphill along the edge of an abyss, and it seemed endless, and so on. For any story, like for example, there are some great beginnings, to famous novels and even short stories. It helps. Well, another example. This is from my feature, which is in the book as well, a Telegraph feature on the Russian old believers in Alaska, which Alaska is one of my favorite places in the world. And because it's so American as well, I call it a kind of shopping mall of beauty. It's really amazingly beautiful. she was sitting on the pavement, or as they say in America, sidewalk, next to a pause for coffee shop for dogs in a windswept suburb of Anchorage, Alaska's biggest city. Her slanting Inupiaq eyes stared straight in front of her across the buzzing freeway and further past the McDonald's outlet and the gray modernistic bungalow of an Alaska cremation center into nowhere. She was drunk or stoned, or most likely both. Alcoholism and drug addiction are still rife among Alaska's natives. So basically, there's quite a lot of information already in this opening sentence about Alaska, about its history, and about everything. And then the reader hopefully gets hooked on something like that. Another great one belongs to my late friend, unfortunately, Joseph Heller, the writer whom I was lucky to know quite well, the author of Catch-22. In his autobiographical novel Now and Then, he opens it like that. He describes Coney Island, basically, where he was born, this strange kind of amusement park, American amusement park. The golden stripe around the carousel was made of brass. I think it's a brilliant sentence. The golden stripe made of brass. So that's the example of in medias res, and I want you to try yourself in it and see what happens, and this way and that way. So I basically lost almost everything I had personally, well, in every way, basically. After 10 years of this kind of uncontrolled travels, I probably became a slightly better writer, but that was kind of the only gain that I found. All the rest was lost, and that's what every aspiring travel writer should be prepared for. And when people ask me again at the seminar, so what do I do to improve my writing skills? I said, forget about writing. The main thing is to live like a writer. Your life will reflect itself. When the time comes, forget about putting words on paper. Just go and live a life, travel. Get divorced or whatever. I don't know. Just it's still probably a very East European concept. Tolstoy said that the writer must suffer. I don't believe in it anymore. The writer should not really suffer more than other people. I mean, being interested in Buddhism now, I know that all our life is suffering of a kind, but instead of suffering, Tolstoy himself, by the way, he didn't really suffer that much until the very end of his days. So instead of suffering, the writer needs constant titillation, constant new impressions, and then, well, basically, if he can write, if he or she can write, it will happen. So I basically say, go and travel for 5 years, so go and kind of break up with your girlfriend or boyfriend and suffer a little bit, sleep rough, No, that's a bit too extreme, but these are the most important qualities. And many people, when they hear that, they just say, oh, well, that's not for me. Then, oh, well, that's fine, because writing is probably one of the hardest professions you can imagine in terms of rewards as well. The average income of a British writer, I think, is £5,000 a year. Just think about that, and that's the average. Not talking about J.K. Rowling.